So this story of hope is one of those that feels too good to be true. We're going to hear from a member of my Hope program who was suffering with many ectopic pregnancies after having her first child. Her journey goes from secondary infertility to low ovarian reserve to being told her only option was actually egg donation, to finally getting pregnant naturally, actually in her words, stupidly fast. If you're watching this video, you've probably been trying to get pregnant for a while with no success. And you've been told that IVF or egg donation might be your only option. Listen, because I'm going to share what we did for her so you can actually glean a glimmer of hope and know what it feels like to be successful even when you've been told it's against all odds. During the last 20 years that I've been a fertility expert, I've seen this many, many times. They joined the Hope program after being told there was nothing that they could do. For many of the members of my program, we are the last hope, the last resource. Hopefully, you're ready to take action after listening to her as well. So let's get started. So as I do with all my stories of hope, I comment throughout. So I'm going to let her tell her story, and then I'm going to comment throughout her testimonial, her video, to impart some of those details that she leaves out, and to give you some more details about what she actually went through, how we supported her, and how we got to the results that she received. Now, as you'll also be able to see, the quality of the video is not great, and I apologize for that, but hopefully you can hear her story and hear her words, and that is really the most important part. So let's get started. All right, so let's hear from Julia.
I got pregnant at 38 with my son really, really easily. It was like 4 months, very, very healthy. So when we decided we want a second one, we were kind of like, oh, this is going to be another like cakewalk, because it had only been like 3 years. So I guess we started in the summer. I forget exactly when I was about 41, I think. And, 6 months go by and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? Why hasn't this happened yet? And we did like some sort of holistic online thing, and it didn't really work. And after a couple months and many, many, many chemical pregnancies, I was like, okay, well, I should probably go see a fertility specialist. And so we found a couple in our area, and we went in and they did like an ultrasound, I forget what exactly they're called, the ultrasounds. And they found that, you're supposed to have like 30 eggs, and I had like 6. So I was like, okay, well, that might be one of the reasons why, it's not hitting.
So I want to comment here. First and foremost, she got pregnant successfully. They waited some time. Yes, she was a little bit older, but because she was pregnant previously, they rightly thought that it wouldn't be an issue moving forward. And so I believe up until this point, they've handled everything appropriately. They tried for a period of time. It was not successful. They had some repeated moments of chemical pregnancies, which weren't successful. And now she's looking for additional support and additional help. And so rightly so, she goes to the fertility clinic. For those of you who don't know, fertility clinic is synonymous with IVF clinic. They go together. And one of the first things that they do is do an ultrasound, which is what she said. Now, this is the place where I'm going to interject a little bit more, because what she said was, well, I'm supposed to have 30 follicles or eggs, and I had, I think she said 6 or 7. The reality is at her age, she's not supposed to have 30 follicles on any given cycle, okay? That's what we would expect from a 20 or 25-year-old, not a 41 or 42-year-old at this point. Right? So that's not realistic and nothing that we would expect to be accurate. And I would actually swap that and say the amount of follicles that we're seeing for her at her age are completely appropriate and normal, and something that I would absolutely expect. So don't get caught up in that. I also want to point out that the reality is, as many of you have probably heard me say this, is that it doesn't really matter how many follicles you have. We need one good, healthy follicle/egg every cycle to be fertilized. And that's really what we're working towards. So let's not get overly caught up on those things. I'm not saying that we don't want to address those and improve it. I'm just saying that they are not, in the end, the difference maker to your ability to get pregnant or not. So let's continue to hear her story.
And then they talked about, IUD, but about it wouldn't really, why bother with it, because the issue isn't the fact that sperm isn't getting there. It's the fact that there's no eggs to receive.
She meant IUI.
So after that, they were talking about IVF, and specifically about donor IVF. Like, they wouldn't even think about trying to use my own eggs. So like,
so quick, right? She's had a successful pregnancy in the past. Yes, she's a little bit older. And she's, mind you, she just said she's got, on a scan, she's got 6 or 7 follicles. And now they're still already so quickly talking about donor? It's not congruent. It doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense.
We ethically cannot do that to you, because it'd be like, we just wasting all of your money. And it was going to be like $30,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, we don't have just $30,000 laying around. So we kind of put that on the back burner for a little bit, and maybe we're going to think about doing other IVF clinics. And then, you know, I've seen Mark on YouTube. You know, I've seen his videos, things pop up, and I've watched a few over the years. And then I was like, saw his program, and I was like, you know, maybe I should look into that a little bit more. And so that was probably the summer of 22. Yeah, summer of 22. So I contacted them, and, you know, I joined the program, and I like the fact that it was, you know, more natural, because I don't want to just inject myself with a bunch of stuff. And if I could do it naturally, that'd be great. I really, you know, donor egg is great, but I really didn't want to do that. I did not want to do donor egg IVF. So yeah, so I joined, I think, in August of 22. And I did the initial, all the blood work. And I think what came back was what we kind of expected. I had low egg reserve because I was 42 at the time. So, you know, obviously I wasn't going to have, you know, a huge amount. They told me that I needed to do a candida cleanse. So I don't remember exactly what month that started, but I started doing the candida cleanse, and I did that through October, I think, until January, and then I finished it.
So everybody who starts the Hope program, we do an initial assessment, and we do a foundational baseline lab work if someone hasn't had that done. So that's what she's referring to in terms of the labs that she had done. And yes, we did find, as I mentioned before, that she had lower ovarian reserve, but it was still appropriate for her age. So it wasn't like different in any way. And so that's the thing that I want you to recognize there. But yes, we do recognize that. We do point it out to her. So that's still important. And again, not something we're going to ignore, but something that we recognize. But our main goal was still addressing the root cause of what was going on for her. And part of that, as she mentioned, was digestive issues with candida. So we started her as a protocol with addressing that first and foremost.
January 2023, I got my program.
I just have to say, so after she did her candida detox, then we wrote up a customized fertility plan for her based on her labs and her results and her needs. That's what she's talking about.
And I started taking the supplements, and at the end of January 2023, I got a positive pregnancy test, and it was the strongest one I'd gotten. So all of my ones, you know, I mean, if you know chemical pregnancies, they are very faint and they never darken. But this one, I was like 3 days late. It was super dark. I got my betas tested, you know, early February, and they were rising beautifully. And 10 months later, you know, I had a baby girl on October 8th in my bathroom, actually, just right over there. So planned. She was a home birth.
She was a home birth. Yeah.
It wasn't an accident.
So one of the things that I want to point out here, which she didn't comment on, but something I feel like is really important for us to address, is in her assessment, we found several areas that needed to be supported in addition to her addressing the candida. One of those things was her thyroid and her immune function with regards to her thyroid. So the lab showed that her thyroid antibodies were elevated, which likely, something I often see, which likely occurred after her first pregnancy, her first successful pregnancy. It's a big contributing factor to secondary fertility issues and was never looked at or addressed. And so that was something that was a big part of her plan, by the way, in all regards: diet, lifestyle, and supplements. We also found some other things. We knew that her uterus was antiverted, and so that needed to be accounted for. We knew that she had some fibroids, some low vitamin D, some cysts, and so we needed to support those areas. So really the plan that we created did all that, just like I mentioned, with from beginning to end. So lifestyle, We needed to change that for her. Diet, we really needed to make a huge shift for her. And then the supplements needed to do that. So that's when she talks about receiving her fertility plan. That's what that was about. Now, I do want to comment here. If you're listening to the timeline of what she said we did the Candida detox. And then in January, I started the plan. The plan was given to me and I started it. And then at the end of January, I got my strongest positive HCG levels. So as much as I think the fertility plan that she received in January was valuable and important for her, I do not believe that that was the reason why she actually conceived. I believe that some of the things in there did help her hold and maintain the pregnancy through her first trimester and into the length of the entire pregnancy. But I don't believe that was the spark that really made things happen. I do think that was actually the Candida detox. We find often that the root cause of autoimmune issues is actually digestive issues. And in her case, it was the Candida, the yeast overgrowth in her intestines and in her gut. And that, addressing that, took the burden away from her immune system and allowed it to function more properly and be less reactive. So that way, when she did conceive in January, it allowed for implantation and didn't get in the way. And then I believe that some of the supplements we put in, because we did put in things to help with her immune function and support that, helped maintain throughout the first trimester. So everyone is not as fortunate as her in terms of that timeline. Some people do need to be on their fertility plan longer before they actually get that positive to be able to hold and have a successful pregnancy. And I believe we have other stories of hope that reflect that. But for Julia's, this was her timeline. This was her story. This was her journey. But most importantly, she did the work, right? She did the things we asked her to do. I didn't do it. I just laid the foundation and guided her. She actually did the hard work, which is what you need to do to get the results that she was able to achieve. Let's finish up hearing from her.
But yeah, so that's pretty much. I still have a box of supplements because I literally only use them for like 30 days.
Yeah.
And then like they're in my box. Like I have them downstairs. I'm tempted to go onto the Facebook page and say, does anybody need some unopened supplements? Because I don't need them anymore. So yeah, so that's what happened. It was pretty stupidly fast. So
if you remember in the beginning of this, I said she called it stupidly fast. It was her words, not mine. You just heard her say it at the end. I'm really grateful that it was stupidly fast, but that's not always the case. And I think so much of that is a testament to the work she put in, the foundational efforts that she put in, and everything she did on her side to get to that point in time. So these things are absolutely possible for all of you. And now I want to hear from you. What parts of Julia's story do you resonate with? Connect with you. Maybe you have a similar experience or a similar situation. Comment below and let me know. And I also want to hear from you in terms of your questions. What questions do you have about her situation or your fertility that you would like more clarity on? Comment below and let me know. Now, hopefully, it's your time. What if you could be the next success story from the Hope program? What if you join the program now and have a baby in 9 months' time? Although I think that might be a little bit fast, but you know what I'm trying to say. So if you want that to be possible for you, I want to invite you to head on over to marksklar.com/discovery call. I'll put that link in the description below to speak to a real person on my team so we can identify if having me as your fertility coach is the right next step for you on your fertility journey. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I did. I love these stories and I find them rewarding and I love sharing them with all of you. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you're not already a subscriber to my YouTube channel, subscribe now so you can get notified when I put out a new video for all of you. Now, here are some other success stories, couples who have joined my Hope program and were able to be part of the story of hope, timeline. And until the next video, stay fertile.